We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. The afternoon light at Riverside Cafe slid through the tall glass windows, casting a golden hue over the brown wooden tables, rich with the aroma of freshly ground coffee. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, as always. He chose a seat by the exposed brick wall, his back to the window that overlooked the cobblestone street. People passed beneath the red blaze of autumn leaves, while he, as usual, wrapped himself in his own neat armor, a crisp white shirt, a gray tie perfectly centered, and his father's wristwatch gleaming like a fine cut of time against his skin. He wasn't sure why he'd agreed to this. Probably because Ava, his sister, had reminded him no fewer than 10 times that he needed to meet someone who wasn't a contract. She even threatened that if he refused again, she'd create an online dating profile for him with the description, "Workaholic lawyer. Knows how to smile but rarely uses the function." Ethan shuddered. A blind date sounded far more humane. He skimmed the menu to kill time. Cappuccino, cold brew, lemon tart. His heartbeat was steady, but when his phone lit up with a message from Ava, "She's on her way, don't run," a rare facial muscle twitched. The door chimed as it opened, and the sound felt like a cue. The woman who stepped inside disrupted the order of the words in his mind. She wasn't dazzling in a showy way. Her brightness was the kind that came right after rain, warm and unexpected. Her hair was tied neatly back, a few loose strands framing her cheeks. A beige shirt tucked into dark jeans, simple flats. But it was her eyes, honey-colored, bright, slightly mischievous, that drew attention and held it. "Ethan Cole?" she asked with a smile, as if already knowing the answer. He stood up quicker than he'd planned. "Yes, and Emma." He extended his hand and hers fit perfectly, firm, warm, unhesitant. "Emma, friend of Ava," she joked, making him pause a beat before realizing she was introducing herself playfully. Her humor pulled him out of the usual polite rhythm of small talk. They sat down. The waiter arrived. Emma ordered an oat milk latte and a slice of lemon tart. "If there's still any left," she turned to him. "What about you?" "Don't tell me it's a double shot espresso. No sugar. Guess right, and I get bonus points." "Cold brew," Ethan said, lifting an eyebrow. "No sugar." "Close," she smiled. "So, you're still in the safe zone." "The safe zone helps people avoid mistakes," he replied automatically, in the well-rehearsed tone of a lawyer built on structure. "But the safe zone rarely makes your heart race." Emma shrugged. "And I heard the heart needs exercise too." Ethan laughed, a short, genuine sound that startled even him. How long had it been since he'd laughed at something so simple, without hidden meaning, without consequences or preparation? "So, Emma," he began, ready to pull out his standard set of questions. Work, hobbies, family. But she tilted her head, observing him with a look that hovered somewhere between curiosity and understanding, making him feel, for once, like the one being interviewed. "Do you always set your alarm 15 minutes earlier than the meeting time?" she asked. "What makes you think that?" "There's a faint red mark on your left wrist where your watch sits, a sign of being taken off in a hurry. Your shirt's wrinkle-free, but there's a soft horizontal crease on your shoulder, someone who hangs their clothes the night before. And," she narrowed her eyes thoughtfully, "you have the calm but cautious look of someone who's always early. The late ones carry haste, the punctual logic. The early ones usually carry a story they don't talk about." Ethan blinked. He wanted to deny it out of habit, but her words pierced something long numb inside him. "Are you a detective?" "Teacher," she said proudly, like sharing a secret. "Literature. Habits are symbols, and details are whispers." "So what do the details whisper about me?" Emma met his gaze unflinching. "That you're meticulous to the point of exhaustion. That you like control, even over your own emotions. And," she paused for a heartbeat, lips curving slightly, "that you're a little nervous about this date, but won't admit it." "Not nervous. Just curious," he corrected, then realized curiosity was just another form of anxiety. "And you?" "I like meetings without a script," she said, resting her chin on her hand. And this one seems unscripted. Their drinks arrived. The lemon tart carried the scent of fresh zest. Emma took a spoonful, then pushed the plate toward him. Want to try? I don't believe a cold brew drinker can resist lemon tart. I don't, Ethan started to say, eat sweets, but stopped. He took the spoon, tasted it. The tartness and sweetness melted quickly, leaving a faint buttery saltiness behind. He nodded. Good. Like this date, she teased. Good. Judging already? Teachers are allowed midterm grading, she winked, but I can raise your score if you try harder. I'm the student now? You're an unfinished essay, she corrected, and I like to read till the last page. Ethan leaned back, for once not feeling the need to keep his posture perfect like in court. Losing control, a feeling he normally avoided, didn't feel unpleasant here. Maybe because Emma didn't seize the lead to prove anything. She simply lived fully in the moment, making every exchange feel effortless, like two old friends in conversation. How did you and Ava meet? He asked, steering back toward safer ground. She came to my school for an outreach program, Emma explained. We argued over a quote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." Ava said it's often misattributed to Plato. I said the author matters less than whether people actually live by it. The conclusion? We became friends. That sounds like Ava. Ethan chuckled softly. Argue first, then befriend. By the way, Emma leaned slightly forward, her tone gentler. She said you're a good man, but sometimes need reminding of that. Ethan paused. The words good and need reminding sat together awkwardly. You think people need reminders to be good? No, she said. I think people need to be seen. When they're seen, they remember why they chose goodness in the first place. A light breeze drifted in as someone opened the door, carrying the faint scent of rain and wet wood. Ethan found himself asking, Are you always this straightforward? Almost, Emma said casually, as if commenting on the weather. I didn't used to be. I used to be afraid of bothering people. Now I'm afraid of missing what's real. She sipped her latte, her smile reaching her eyes. Being direct saves time for both. I'm guessing you don't like fancy things, Ethan said. Not allergic, she grinned. But if I had to choose, I'd take a conversation that listens over an expensive bouquet. So you teach because you like listening? Because I want my students to listen to themselves, she corrected gently, and because I love books. Plus, kids are the most beautiful first drafts of humanity. Ethan nodded. Her answers weren't flowery. They carried the warmth of someone who'd been wrinkled by life and smoothed herself out through kindness. He suddenly thought of his father, the man who taught him to be sharp, strong, decisive, and wondered what the old man would say about an afternoon where his son let a woman steer the conversation. Emma set her spoon down, fingers interlaced on the table. My turn for a hard question, she said playfully. What's one thing you've done recently just because it made you happy? Not out of duty or image? Ethan opened his mouth, then stopped. His schedule flashed before him like a string of numbers. Meetings, client calls, approvals, working dinners. Joy? Recently? He searched, found nothing. He didn't want to lie. Maybe, he exhaled, this afternoon. Smooth answer, Emma tilted her head, but I'll accept it, for now. And you? I bought an old camera at a flea market, she said. I take pictures of my students when they laugh, after finally understanding a poem. Blurry, shaky, bad lighting, but it makes me happy. He found himself smiling again. Not out of politeness, not to win favor, just because he could picture those slightly blurry photos and the joy behind them. Emma set her spoon down and gently turned her latte cup as if adjusting the focus of a photograph. She looked up, smiled, a bright, slightly mischievous smile. You don't remember me, do you, Ethan Cole? Ethan froze. Hearing his name in her voice was like a key slipping perfectly into an old lock. Have we met before? He asked, keeping his lawyer's composure, though his eyes had already betrayed him. There was a shimmer in them, like cold brew in motion. Same school, Westfield, Emma replied lightly, as if talking about the weather. You were the campus star, team captain, valedictorian, applause record breaker. And I was the janitor's kid, chubby, shy, always wearing a uniform one size too big, a perfect combo for nickname games. She spoke without bitterness. Her tone carried the ease of someone who'd long folded a torn chapter, pressed a leaf between the pages, and moved on. Ethan lowered his head slightly as though seeing a corridor from long ago. The scent of detergent, footsteps on tile, the wall where his friends once laughed. I don't remember clearly, he admitted honestly. It's okay, Emma shrugged, her eyes bright as porch lights. I'm not here to test your memory. I just wanted to put the right name to a familiar face. She leaned forward, honey-colored eyes glinting, and tell you a funny story, funny in a strange kind of way. The espresso machine hummed behind the counter. Sunlight slanted through the leaves outside, scattering gold across the wooden floor. Emma began, her voice carrying the rhythm of a teacher guiding children through a difficult poem. When I was 17, there was a night that was both embarrassing and oddly funny. Jessica Winter's party. Yes, the one where the bass was pounding like it wanted to shake the tiles loose. I wasn't invited, of course. That evening, I'd been cleaning shifts with my dad, so my nose was full of ammonia fumes. On my way home, I walked past Jessica's house. Lights blazing, laughter spilling everywhere. And there you were, sitting on the steps alone, looking like the whole sky had just played a joke on you. Ethan gave a short, awkward laugh. Sounds about right for a 17-year-old who just got dumped. Maybe, Emma winked. I just wanted to slip by, blend into the dark, survival skill of anyone used to being stared at. But you looked up. I told myself, brace yourself, Emma. I expected some snide comment, or worse, you calling the gang over to look. But all you said was, "Are you okay?" It's late. She paused a beat, smiling. Oh, and here comes the dramatic part. You pulled out your wallet and laid a 20 on the step. Ethan frowned, then smiled faintly, like someone recognizing an old photograph. I did that? Emma lifted a finger, speaking slowly, warmly. And you said, quoting exactly because this memory's been preserved in a glass jar, it's not charity, just one person looking out for another. Please take a cab. I'll feel better knowing you did. The words rested on the table like a warm towel. Ethan set his cup down, his hand unconsciously closing, then opening again. I don't remember every word, he admitted, but that does sound like me back then. I know, Emma nodded. I snapped at you. Told you I didn't need handouts. Even a chubby kid in a bleach-stained uniform has her pride. She laughed clear and light. But you didn't pull back, didn't lecture me. You just repeated slow and steady, it's not charity. Please. Those two words, please, felt like someone had handed me an umbrella in the rain. So yes, I took the money, called a cab, and cried the whole way home. Not because of the $20, but because for the first time, someone from the opposite world, treated me like a person, not a label. She shrugged, her smile returning, bright, effortless. So that's it. My $20 memory, a small sentence that quietly changed direction. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. I'm sorry, he said simply, sincerely, for every time I laughed along. For letting you walk alone for so long. I didn't come to blame you, Emma said, her voice clear and steady like a morning breeze. I came to see who you've become. The way she phrased it made Ethan freeze. In his mind, all the usual defense mechanisms, explaining, rationalizing, quoting professional ethics, lined up, then quietly dissolved. He looked at her and realized that the woman before him didn't resemble an accusation. She was a mirror, clear, upright, and honest. What do you see? He asked. I see a man standing on the line between being fine and being real, Emma replied, her mischievous smile touching the corner of her eyes. And I'm curious which side you'll choose. Her words made Ethan exhale as though loosening a stiff collar. In most meetings, he won by saying the right thing at the right moment. Here, he didn't want to win. He just wanted to be truthful. I haven't decided yet, he admitted. Not deciding is still a temporary decision, Emma said, the same way she often spoke to her students. She rested her elbow on the table. As for me, I've chosen. I'm a teacher. I love my job. I love how a single line of poetry, a paragraph, or a well-timed sentence can open a window in someone's mind. And I've learned to live without asking permission to be happy. Sounds like a declaration, Ethan said, feeling the corners of his mouth lift on their own. Well, someone has to sign their own declaration, Emma smiled. I used to be weak. I thought strength meant silence and endurance. Now I know strength means knowing how to say no, how to say enough, and also how to say I want. I choose to sleep enough, laugh enough, work kindly enough, and stay quiet at the right time. I choose myself. Each word landed on the wooden table like small, polished stones. Ethan found himself leaning toward her, like a compass needle drawn by a magnetic field. He didn't know when admiration had grown into a quiet awe. The girl who once shrank into hallways now sat tall and sure of herself, yet still carried the softness of someone who remembered what fragility felt like. Emma, he said, her name rolling off his tongue more easily this time. I'd like to see you again. A proper dinner. To talk like two people who know where they're heading. Okay. Emma nodded right away, no hesitation. But on one condition. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. No fancy restaurants, she said, raising one finger as if writing it on a board. Only someplace real. A diner that welcomes noise, has chipped wooden tables, and an owner who calls her customers by name. Deal, Ethan chuckled. I assume nothing there requires a manual to eat? Exactly, Emma winked. We'll order whatever pie's in season, coffee with no promises, and a window seat with a view of real life. The diner looked exactly as she described. Neon sign flickering, the air rich with butter and vanilla, the counter gleaming behind rows of fresh pies. A small bell chimed as they entered. The gray-haired owner, hair tied high and oven gloves still on, looked up with a grin. New folks? What'll it be, hun? Cherry pie, 1 scoop of ice cream, Emma said like a regular, and hot coffee. For him, she turned to Ethan, pretending to be serious. Want to try what sugar feels like? Ethan pretended to ponder as if facing a multi-million-dollar deal. I'll have what she's having, he said, then added, and a slice of apple pie. I need both sides of the argument. They sat by the window. Outside, the street moved at a slower pace. Inside, everything felt more genuine. The clinking of spoons, the laughter, the unscripted greetings. Ethan felt his chest ease. So, Emma began, do we talk about the past first or the parents first? Your choice, Ethan said. The past, she nodded, not avoiding it. I used to be overweight. I used to fear laughter. I used to curl into my jacket like a hedgehog. I thought if I stayed quiet enough, people would forget me. Wrong. They didn't forget. They just added drawings on top of me. Then my dad taught me a line. No one deserves for you to make yourself smaller. I practiced walking upright, even when I shook. I practiced eating what I liked in public. I practiced saying, excuse me, that seat's mine, when I needed to. Every time I practiced, I won a little. Your dad, Ethan asked softly, still working at the school? He retired, Emma said, her smile gentling. He opened a small wood shop and built bookshelves for the kids. He calls it the second home of poetry. I think he truly believes Wood remembers. She looked down at her hands, then back up. And your father? Ethan touched his watch, reflexively. He's gone, he said quietly. He left me this watch and a vault full of expectations. He believed in standing tall, winning, and never showing weakness. I studied that lesson so hard, I forgot to ask what made me happy. And have you started asking now? Emma tilted her head. Starting to, Ethan said, and part of the answer is sitting right here. Emma laughed at his straightforwardness. All right, bonus points for honesty. She nodded toward his wrist. Ever feel like taking that watch off? Sometimes, Ethan admitted, to see if I can still measure time by something else, like the smell of a pie fresh out of the oven. Welcome to the club, Emma said just as the owner brought their pies. The warm butter and brown sugar scent wrapped around them, softening everything. Emma pushed her cherry pie toward him. Try it. Ethan cut a piece. The crust crackled, the sweet tart flavor burst on his tongue. He nodded, eyes softening, like someone who'd just been soothed from the inside out. Delicious, he said without hesitation. Significant progress, Emma teased. Now, the fear of failure segment. You first or me? Me. Ethan leaned on his hand, meeting her eyes. I'm afraid that if I let go of the things that keep everyone comfortable, titles, packed schedules, successful meetings, people will be disappointed. And if they're disappointed, it means I've dropped something my father left behind. But are you sure that thing was really yours? Emma asked gently. Or just a shadow someone else hung in your closet? She spoke slowly, like untangling a knot for her students. Sometimes keeping people comfortable just means living by their fears. Being real means living by your own hopes. Ethan fell silent. Something flickered through him, like a small current lighting up a dark corner. Being real, he repeated. I'm not sure I ever was. Then practice, Emma smiled, like I practiced saying, excuse me, that seat's mine. Start small. For example, choose sugar or laugh when you want to. Laugh when I want to, Ethan repeated, tasting the phrase like a new word. You haven't really laughed in a while, Emma said softly, her eyes brightening, but I think you're about to. They sat quietly for a moment, listening to spoons against mugs, gentle street sounds outside. Ethan found himself talking about his mother, a gentle woman who set meals on the table like a ritual, about the apartment he only used to sleep in, about his latest win that felt hollow. Emma told him about the blog she ran for her students, where she asked weekly, "What's one small thing you're proud of this week?" She told him about a boy who once hated poetry but beamed when he found his own rhythm in a line of Whitman. Maybe, Emma mused, resting her chin on her hand, you just need to learn how to live honestly instead of perfectly, like a contract. The sentence hit home. Ethan laughed, not the thin, polite laugh of networking, but a deep, unexpected laugh that made him bow his head, hand over mouth. The owner glanced over and chuckled too. That good, sugar? Very, Ethan managed, still laughing. He looked up and met Emma's gaze, warm, teasing, and more than that, understanding. In that instant, he felt as though some hidden button inside his chest had been pressed, not to sound the alarm, but to start the engine. See? Emma lifted her thumb. Told you you could. And you, Ethan said, you're the kind of woman who makes people want to become better versions of themselves. I just shine a light, Emma said, her smile slow and steady. Whether they walk that path or not, that's their choice. Outside, dusk had fallen. The neon sign painted soft pink streaks on the wet street. On the table, only pie crumbs remained. Ethan looked at his father's watch, then slipped it off for a moment and set it beside his coffee. He didn't explain. Emma didn't ask. They simply sat there for a long while, letting the quiet comfort of that modest diner ferment into something that felt very much like hope. The morning unfolded under a thin strip of cloud hanging over the rooftops, as if the sky itself were hesitating between sun and shade. Ethan stood before the bedroom mirror, tying his tie and then undoing it again. The once familiar motion had slowed. He studied his reflection, a crisp white shirt, eyes accustomed to fluorescent office light. Around his wrist, his father's watch gleamed. The second hand never forgot its duty. Make your father proud. That sentence was never written on the wall, but it was there at every dinner, every time his father's hand rested on his shoulder. Stand straight, speak firmly. Don't let anyone see the soft spots. Ethan had learned those lessons well, so well they'd become a second skin. But a second skin, worn too long, can make a man forget what the wind feels like. He poured himself a cup of coffee, leaned against the window frame, and looked down at the waking street. A man walked a golden retriever along the sidewalk. At the corner, an old flower vendor pushed a cart full of daisies. For a moment, the quiet in the air felt like a conversation at a diner, asking nothing of anyone, simply inviting them to sit and breathe. He texted Emma, "Wishing you at least one big smile today." "I'm practicing the smile because you want to part." The reply came quickly, "Deal. And remember to eat breakfast. Being kind to yourself isn't a weakness." Ethan smiled, tied his tie again, but this time loosened it one notch, just enough to breathe. Ethan's office sat on the 14th floor, where glass walls mirrored the sky like a vague promise. His desk was immaculate, files sorted by color, pen aligned, notebook open to a page of bullet points. But today he pushed his chair back and sat still for several minutes, not touching the keyboard. His calendar overflowed with meetings. He zoomed in, then out, then stopped at the small gap between 12 o'clock and 12:15, a slot he usually filled with a quick update call. He opened his notes app and typed, "Things that made me happy this week." 1. Emma's text. 2. Cherry pie. 3. Laughing for no reason, he stared at the 3 lines. So simple it was almost funny, like 3 tiny nails in a blank wall. But sometimes 3 nails are enough to hang a picture. A colleague dropped by, Marcus, the senior associate, whose handshake was both firm and cold. "You're presenting Section 7 this afternoon," Marcus said. "Don't show any gaps in the negotiation. Clients like to hear, 'We have full control.'" "Full control can be a dangerous phrase," Ethan replied politely. "I think we should be honest, acknowledge risks A and B, but show we're prepared. It sounds more human." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Clients buy certainty, not emotion. Don't be soft." The word soft poked the part of Ethan he'd guarded for years, but in his mind Emma's voice rose. "Sometimes making people feel safe just means you're feeding their fears. Living truthfully means following your own hope." He took a slow breath. "I'll balance both," he said, not defiant, but steady. After Marcus left, Ethan reopened the slide deck. For the first time, he added a new page. What we know, what we're monitoring, what we need you to help decide. For him, it was like loosening a tie mid-presentation. Less perfection, more truth. At noon, he left the office 10 minutes early. The street shimmered with sunlight, and the smell of toasted bread drifted from a corner bakery. He ordered an egg sandwich and ate it, standing on the sidewalk, watching the crowd stream by. Eating on his feet, hands a little sticky with sauce. It felt stupidly, wonderfully human. His phone buzzed. Emma had sent a photo of her classroom, a blackboard with the question, "One small thing I'm proud of this week?" and a rainbow of sticky notes below. Her text read, a boy wrote, "I read a poem aloud in class without freezing. I still shook a little, but I finished. Reminder, opening up doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to finish." He almost replied, "I'm rereading myself," but instead sent a picture of his half-eaten sandwich with the caption, "Eating has sugar, reading has fat." Emma answered with a cascade of laughing emojis. That afternoon, the presentation took place in a large glass conference room where the air conditioner hummed constantly. Ethan looked at the clients, people in suits that smelled faintly of money, and then at his colleagues lined up like chess pieces. When he reached the slide titled "What We Know for Sure," his heart quickened. He spoke slowly, clearly. "We don't promise invincibility. We promise honesty and readiness." A moment of silence. Then the client's lead representative nodded. "I like that you separate reassurance from perfection. Keep it that way." Ethan straightened a fraction taller, another small crack in the shell, but instead of making him fragile, it made him light. After work, Ethan brought 2 cups of hot cocoa to Emma's school, texting first, "I'm outside. Don't want to interrupt class." But Emma was already waiting on the steps, scarf wrapped around her neck, cheeks pink from the cold. She took the cup and smiled. "Full marks for sweetness." "And you?" he asked, handing her the other cup. "How was your day?" "One of my girls argued with me about her essay," Emma said, laughing softly. "She thought compassion was a sign of weakness. I told her to try standing in the schoolyard without mocking anyone. See how much strength that takes. I said, don't wear resentment as armor. It's heavy and not warm." She stopped arguing, but I'm not sure I reached her. "You did," Ethan said without hesitation. "Some kids just need time to realize they've been reached." They walked down the hallway together. Student artwork lined the walls, seasons drawn in wax crayons. The smell of paper, chalk, and old wood stirred memories of his own school days. Except now there were no whistles or jeers echoing behind him. I love this place, Emma said, eyes bright. The noise here doesn't tire me. It means something. I think I'm starting to understand, Ethan replied. I used to think silence was strength. Now I see that sometimes saying, I'm scared, or I'm tired, feels closer to being strong. Emma turned to him, eyebrow raised. Major progress. Then playfully, quick quiz. Kindness is fill in the blank. Ethan thought for a second. Choosing gentleness when harshness would be easier. Asking, are you okay? To others and to yourself. Perfect answer, Emma laughed aloud. Who would have thought a corporate lawyer could write something that soft? And you, he said, stopping before the window that looked out onto the yard. Remember, kindness isn't weakness. Setting boundaries is also being kind to yourself. Don't take all those essays home. He pointed at the heavy tote bag in her hand. Emma pretended to sigh, eyes sparkling. Busted. She set the bag down on a nearby bench. Fine, I promise. I'll grade up to page 31. They both laughed. In that moment, Ethan realized that breaking the shell wasn't loud. It was in the small creases of a loosened tie, the honest slide in a presentation, the sweet cocoa, the extra laughing emoji. It was standing in a school hallway and feeling at peace. Ethan, Emma said softly, warmly, if one day you find yourself slipping back, too punctual, too perfect, too busy being worthy, remember this. You're worthy as you are, even when you don't do everything your father expected. Any father who loves his son wants him to breathe. The words entered him like warmth. Ethan looked at his father's watch, and for the first time in public, he took it off and placed it in his coat pocket, like setting a memory on a safe shelf. I'm learning to breathe, he said quietly, and it doesn't feel wrong. Before they parted, Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a small blue cloth notebook. A gift, she said, a journal for one small thing I'm proud of. 1 line a day, nothing grand. Ethan took it, brushed off an invisible speck of dust. I'll write. He looked at her, smiling, a smile that came on its own, without command. Today, I spoke honestly in a presentation. I smiled. I took off the watch. 3 lines already? Emma widened her eyes. Overachiever. A little greed never hurt, he shrugged. When the shell cracks, better make use of it. They stood on the steps a moment longer, watching the sky turn violet. As Ethan walked away, his stride felt light, like someone returning a suit of armor to a museum. Not discarded, just placed where it belonged. In his coat pocket, the small notebook brushed against his heart. On the other side, his father's watch rested quietly. For the first time, he was sure both could coexist. The past unbinding, the present unhurried, the future roomy enough for a man worthy of himself. That night, sitting at his desk, Ethan opened the notebook and added one private line no one would see. Kindness isn't weakness, it's a muscle to train. He set down the pen, smiled for no reason, and listened to his heartbeat, steady and calm, like a new kind of watch, worn somewhere deeper than the wrist. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. That morning, Ethan unlocked his phone as usual, scrolling through meeting schedules, internal messages, and a few emails marked urgent. But under the recommended reading section, one headline caught his eye. Kindness at 17, How a Simple Sentence Can Change a Life. The cover photo showed a taxi under the rain, its yellow lights streaked into a blur. Something in the title made his finger freeze mid-scroll. He tapped the article open. The first line struck softly against his chest. That night, I was 17, in my night shift janitor uniform, passing by a party glittering with lights. The narrative voice felt uncannily familiar. Clear, grounded, and warm, written in the same rhythm as Emma's way of speaking in class. Ethan scrolled on. The details were lined up neatly, as if pinning down memory. The smell of ammonia, the distant bass of music, the cool stone steps, a boy from another school sitting alone. Then came the sentence, quoted exactly, set apart in bold. It wasn't charity, it was just one person looking out for another. Ethan's finger froze on the screen. His heart skipped as if he'd missed a step in an elevator. There was no doubt. This was him, 17 years old, saying a line he had long forgotten. But Emma had never let go of. The article didn't name him. It wasn't an accusation. It simply set the story down like a glass of water, quiet, clear, and waiting for whoever was thirsty. At the end, Emma's teacherly voice appeared again. If someone once helped you, don't get trapped in the word debt. Let that kindness pass through you and ripple outward. And if you happen to forget the good you once did, that's all right. The good is probably living on in someone else's memory, like a match tucked inside a winter coat. More than 1,200 comments stretch below, most of them short confessions, someone remembering a stranger lending them an umbrella, someone else a driver stopping to change their tire. As Ethan read, his eyes stung. Then he saw one comment from his sister, Ava. I know the author. And I know someone who'll read this and finally learn how to laugh louder. The feeling wasn't a storm of shame. It came like a thin chill tracing his spine, steady enough to make him stand taller inside himself. He was ashamed of forgetting, for letting Emma carry a beautiful memory alone, and ashamed of the years he'd laughed with the crowd. But alongside that shame was something gentler. Gratitude. Grateful that Emma had told the story without malice, leaving a seat open for him to return to the present. He locked his phone. The office hummed softly with air conditioning. For the first time, he skipped the fourth meeting on his calendar. He went downstairs, crossed 2 blocks, and turned into a small plant shop. Without much thought, he chose a deep green pothos, its leaves drooping like graceful commas in the right place. The shopkeeper tied a thin hemp string around the pot and asked if he wanted to add a note. Ethan nodded. He stood there with the pen, writing slowly, afraid to disturb the quiet surface of what he wanted to say. Sometimes the kindest people are the ones who don't remember they've done something good. At noon, Emma's school smelled of paper, chalk, and warm lunches from the cafeteria. Ethan paused outside the gate for a moment to steady his breath. He reminded himself. He wasn't coming to erase the past. He was coming to place the present in both their hands. The courtyard buzzed with students changing classes. On the second-floor hallway, he spotted Emma pointing at a poster for Kindness Week, her students laughing at something she'd said. You picked the perfect plant, Emma said when she saw him, looking at the pothos as if greeting a new student. Pothos are tough. They don't ask for much, just a bit of light. I asked the shopkeeper, what plant survives when people are too busy? Ethan said honestly. She told me, pothos and kindness. Emma laughed, her voice ringing like sunlight breaking through bells. She read the card and her eyes glimmered with quiet warmth. That line fits, she said, pressing the note briefly to her chest before tucking it safely into her pocket. Thank you. I read your article, Ethan said. I'm sorry for making you carry a good memory alone for so long, and thank you for not turning it into a weapon. I only used it as a light, Emma replied. A light helps people see better, others and themselves. Her tone turned teasing again. And this one's energy-saving. No glare. Soft light, Ethan nodded, exhaling in relief. A group of students ran past. One curly-haired girl stopped, staring curiously at the plant. Miss, what's this called? Pothos, Emma said, turning to Ethan. And this is a friend who brought it. The girl gasped to her friends. Our teacher's got a handsome friend. The group giggled and ran off. Emma watched them go, her eyes full of sunlight. Where will you keep it? Ethan asked. The teacher's lounge, Emma said thoughtfully. Right by the window, where everyone can see it. And I'll tape a note under the pot. Touch a leaf before you lose your temper. Good idea, Ethan chuckled. Maybe I should put one outside my conference room. You should. And your note can say, inhale 3 times before saying, fully under control. Emma's eyes sparkled with mischief. Actually, that article made my students share more stories about kindness. One said the security guard always holds the door when it rains. Another said her friend's mom always packs an extra cookie for her. I think faith in the world needs those vitamins. A light breeze swept the hallway, sending colorful sticky notes fluttering off the bulletin board. Ethan caught one and read a scrawl. This week I didn't laugh when someone stuttered. He handed it to Emma, feeling a fine thread tighten gently in his chest, a thread linking the 17-year-old boy on the stone steps to the 32-year-old man standing here now. "You know what's funny?" Emma said, placing the plant on the windowsill and adjusting the leaves so they fell softly. "The article went viral and a lot of people messaged me saying, 'Thanks for reminding us of the small things.' Some even asked, 'How do we start?' And I told them, with an old question, 'Are you okay?' She turned to him. 'Sometimes that's enough.'" "I guess," Ethan said, "that's the same question I should ask myself every day." "Exactly," Emma smiled. "And if the answer is not really, then go have some pie." He laughed, the sound as natural as the kid's footsteps outside. "Deal." They stuck the little reminder under the plant. Emma's handwriting was neat yet lively. "Touch the leaves. Be gentle." She stepped back, tilted her head to look, then gave a thumbs up. "Perfect." Ethan looked at her and saw reflected in his own eyes not the girl who once hid in hallways, but the woman who now walked among people without shielding herself. The one who chose to offer light instead of a hammer, who made kindness look strong rather than fragile. "Emma," he said quietly, "I don't want your article to just be a beautiful day. I want to live by it, not to repay you, but to be the kind of man I want to be." Emma looked at him for a long moment before stepping closer, resting her hand lightly on his arm, a touch that felt like someone accepting a promise without needing paperwork. "Then start by not skipping lunch," she said, breaking the seriousness with her familiar teasing tone. "I've got a chicken sandwich, the busy person kind." "I can buy another," Ethan said. "We'll swap halves." "To live with sugar." "Exactly," Emma laughed. "Just remember, sugar's a spice, not the goal." Before Ethan left, she pulled out the card again and reread the line he'd written, as though touching a melody she'd just learned by heart. "Sometimes the kindest people are the ones who don't remember they've done something good." She looked up, eyes bright. "Thank you for that line. I'll have my students copy it into their notebooks." "I'm honored," Ethan replied. He stepped down the stairs, sunlight scattering across the grass. On the second floor, the teacher's lounge window now held a new patch of green. He turned for one last look. Emma stood beside the plant, talking to the gray-haired janitor, Mrs. Maria, as Emma always called her, and both were laughing. The sight, simple, complete, settled into him like a long, silent nod. Old wounds can coexist with new trust, as long as we remember to water what's still alive. On his way back to the office, Ethan opened his notebook and wrote one line for the day. "Proud of myself for showing up at a school with a plant." Then, in smaller letters beneath it, "And proud for letting someone else remember a good thing I once forgot." Rumors began the way all bad office winds do, with an offhand comment over lunch. "I heard Cole's dating some poor school teacher. Guess he's rebranding himself, from cold attorney to noble savior." Laughter followed, mixed with the clinking of spoons against coffee cups. Ethan walked into the meeting room just in time to catch the end of the sentence. He didn't need anyone to tell him whose voice it was. Mark, a former colleague and rival from his previous firm. Ethan stood still for a second. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "You can mock me if you want," he said evenly, "but don't drag someone else into it, especially someone you've never met." Mark shrugged, his tone careless. "Relax. I'm only saying what everyone's thinking. Handsome, successful, helping out the girl who used to be bullied. Perfect PR fairy tale." Ethan turned away. The door shut behind him with a metallic click. Inside his chest, it felt like someone had tossed a pebble into a still lake. Not enough to break the surface, but enough to ripple endlessly. That afternoon, the news reached Emma, not from Ethan, but from a fellow teacher who'd seen a tagged post making the rounds online. She read it silently. Headline, "From cold lawyer to kind hero, the uneven love story of Ethan Cole and the poor school teacher." Below it were rows of venomous comments. "She knows how to seize an opportunity." That viral story about the kindness at 17 was probably just PR groundwork. Emma felt the heat rise to her face, not from shame, but from the sting of being turned into someone's accessory, a role she had sworn never to play again. She typed 2 words to Ethan. Don't come. Ethan left his meeting the moment he read her message. He drove straight to the school, parked near the back gate, and walked toward the courtyard where Emma often graded papers in the late afternoons. She was there, back straight, hair tousled slightly by the wind. A stack of essays lay in front of her, but her pen had stopped moving. When Ethan approached, she didn't look up. I've read it, she said first. Her tone was calm, though her hands trembled slightly. They say you're using me to polish your image. And I'm the perfect prop for a pity story. Ethan stopped a few feet away. I know. You know? Emma let out a dry laugh. And you still came? Maybe they're right. Maybe to you. I'm just a way to ease the guilt of your past mistakes. No. Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. He took a step closer, his eyes unwavering. I don't regret meeting you. And I won't let anyone rewrite our story. But if I have to prove that I don't pity you, I will. Emma looked up. The sunlight caught her eyes, turning them liquid, though there was no softness in them. She studied him long enough to see that his words weren't an excuse. They were clumsy, but sincere. Ethan, she said, her voice low, you don't need to prove anything to anyone, not even to me. You just need to live differently. Don't say more. The words fell between them like a clean cut. The wind swept through the courtyard, carrying the faint laughter of children from afar. Ethan stood still. For the first time, he realized silence could take shape. It could be rejection, or it could be a chance. Emma gathered her papers and slipped them into her bag. As she passed him, the faint scent of paper and chalk lingered in the air. Ethan didn't reach for her. He only spoke softly, his voice meant for the wind. I'll do as you said. Not to prove anything, but to keep the best thing I've found from turning false. She didn't turn around, but when she reached the gate, she paused for half a second. Then do it, Ethan, she said, her voice gentle but firm. With actions, not words. That night, Ethan sat alone in his dim apartment, the glow of his laptop reflecting off tired eyes. The cruel headlines were still there, the mocking comments still flashing. He drew a deep breath, then clicked report. Not to erase the noise, but to begin. He opened the small blue notebook Emma had given him and turned to a fresh page. His handwriting shook slightly, but each word was clear. Proud that today I didn't justify myself. I chose to act. He set the pen down and leaned back in his chair. Outside, the city buzzed on, but inside there was a pocket of quiet, just enough space to breathe. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't come from others. It comes from the courage to live differently, to live honestly with oneself. And that night, Ethan knew he had taken another step away from his old shell. Monday morning, sunlight streamed through the 14th floor window, laying a soft band of light across Ethan's desk. Steam still rose from his coffee, but his mind was no longer on the figures in the project sheet. After weeks of silence, Emma's words still echoed. Then live differently. Don't say more. She didn't need a promise, and that made him want to keep one more than anything. He looked around the large conference room, matching suits, cool faces, scripted greetings. What once made him proud now felt like a wall of glass, beautiful, but keeping him from breathing. A report lay before him, the title in bold, Strategy to Optimize Client Profits for the Next Fiscal Year. He turned the first page, but instead of reading, he thought of Emma's classroom. Kids laughing as they talked about Kindness Week. Cole, any thoughts on this project? Mark's voice cut in, firm. Ethan looked up and slowly closed the folder. Yes, he said. I think we've optimized long enough. It's time to ask, who actually benefits? The room fell silent. A director turned, frowning. What do you mean? Ethan gave a faint smile. I mean, sometimes the law isn't just a tool to protect people with money. It should be used to protect those without a voice too. No one spoke. Mark gave a short, derisive laugh. Idealism? You're in a law firm, not a philosophy class. Ethan stood and gathered the papers into his briefcase. Then maybe I should go back to my philosophy class. And he walked out, leaving a wake of stunned looks behind him. 3 weeks later, a small, pale gray building sat on a southern corner of the city, a new sign above the door. Cole Legal Aid Center, free legal support for youth. Ethan stood at the entrance, keys in hand. No flashy nameplate, no lavish ribbon cutting. Just a few old friends who'd volunteered to repaint the walls, some wooden chairs and tables, and stacks of files. Low-income students needing help with scholarship paperwork, families needing legal guidance. He drew a deep breath. For the first time, he felt free, owing nothing to anyone, performing for no one. A timid boy of about 16 stepped in, clutching a birth certificate and a tuition dispute form. "Sir, I don't know how to fill this out." Ethan bent a little, smiling gently. "Sir" makes me sound ancient. Just call me Ethan. "Okay, let's do it together." He took a pen and pointed line by line, explaining the way Emma would teach, patient and simple. When the boy signed, Ethan handed him the pen back and smiled for real. "See? The law isn't scary. It's here to protect you, not punish you." The boy nodded, a shaky smile spreading, and Ethan realized this feeling, watching someone discover they have the right to be protected, was worth more than any multi-million-dollar contract. That afternoon, there was a small, quiet opening. No press. A few former colleagues dropped by to wish him well, a few neighbors, and some of Emma's former students brought handmade cards. Amid the small crowd, Emma appeared without fuss. She wore a simple dress, hair tied up, and carried a bouquet of bright sunflowers. Ethan was bent over signing a book donation form when he looked up and saw her at the door. The busy room softened inside him. "You came," he said softly, as if not quite believing it. "I did." Emma smiled and handed him the flowers. "I heard there's a new center, teaching people to believe in justice. I thought I should come take a class." He laughed, an easy, unforced sound. He placed the bouquet in an old glass vase on the reception table. "I'm not very good at it yet," he said, "but I'm learning to live as myself, not as what others expect." Emma looked around. The students' drawings on the walls, white-painted wooden chairs, young faces lit up as they got help. She turned back to him, and her gaze slowly softened. "Looks like you're a quick study," she said quietly. "You look different, lighter." "Maybe because it's the first time I'm working without fear of being wrong," Ethan replied. "The first time I'm choosing what's right for me." A little girl dashed over and held up a hand-drawn card. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan, for saying the law can be a good friend." Emma took the card, read the wobbly letters, then looked at him. "That line sounds familiar." "You're a bad influence," Ethan teased. "Now I'm starting to talk like a teacher." Emma laughed, but something unfamiliar rose in her chest. Trust. The trust that he had truly changed. Not with words, but with action. She watched him sit among the kids, voice low and warm, eyes lit the way they had been when she'd first seen him on that stone step years ago. Only now he wasn't wearing the armor of pride. He wore peace. When the small opening ended and people drifted out, only the two of them remained in the little room washed with sunset. Emma walked over to a pothos plant, the very one he'd once given her. "You brought it here?" "I thought this place needed a reminder," Ethan said, brushing a leaf with his fingertip. "Touch the leaf. Remember to be gentle." "You still have that note?" she asked. "Couldn't throw it away," he smiled. "I'm still learning how to be gentle with myself." Emma watched him for a moment. In that instant, she no longer saw the man from cold conference rooms, but someone sitting at a plain wooden desk, helping a kid understand his rights. A man who had chosen to walk toward the light without needing a guide. Softly, she said, "Congratulations, Ethan Cole." He looked up, met her eyes, and for the first time in years, his smile hid nothing behind it. "Thank you," he said, voice low, "for not believing the worst version of me." "You're welcome," Emma replied, lips tightening, as if to hold back a small tide of feeling. "I just saw the man you could become." They were quiet, listening to the wind outside teasing the curtain. The last light tilted, washing both their faces. Ethan turned to the whiteboard by the door and wrote the center's motto, "Con li va long tutte." He looked at the words, then at her. "That's the lesson you taught me." Emma smiled and answered softly, "No, Ethan, that's the lesson we learned together." Outside, the sky ripened to honeyed orange. A group of kids ran past, waving, "Bye, Mr. Ethan. See you tomorrow." He waved back, heart light as the pothos leaf by the window catching the breeze, and as Emma stepped outside, she glanced back one last time, at the man leaning over to tidy a stack of papers, the smile still on his lips. She understood. This was a turning point that didn't need fireworks. It needed only one person brave enough to live truthfully and another willing to believe it. That afternoon, the rain fell in thin, steady threads, soft, patient, like someone tapping slow rhythms on the tin roof of the old classroom wing. The schoolyard was empty, except for the sound of water dripping from the eaves. Emma sat in the teacher's lounge, bent over a pile of half-graded papers, her eyes occasionally drifting to the window. The rain made the world smaller, filled only with the scent of chalk, coffee, and unspoken thoughts. The door opened, footsteps damp and quiet. Ethan stood at the threshold, holding a brown paper box. His shirt was soaked, his hair a little tousled, but his smile was warm enough to light the whole room. "I didn't make an appointment," he said, voice rough from the rain. "But I heard this is a place where people still get forgiven if they bring pie at the right time." Emma laughed, closing her gradebook. "You knew the students would still be in class, so you picked the sweetest time to walk in, didn't you?" "Not exactly," Ethan replied, stepping closer to set the box on her desk. "I just knew if I waited until tomorrow, I'd regret it." She opened the box. Inside was a golden apple pie, still warm. She looked at him, half skeptical, half moved. "You made this yourself?" "Me and two of your students," he said with a grin. "They told me Ms. Emma likes a crisp crust and less sugar." I took notes like I was drafting a contract. Emma bowed her head and laughed out loud. "Didn't think you listened that carefully." Ethan pulled up a chair opposite her. The rain outside turned into a soft background hum. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. Slowly, each word lifted from deep inside him. "Once I gave you $20 so you could get home safe." Emma nodded, her eyes flickering with a trace of memory. "You still remember?" "I do," he said quietly. "But I forgot the more important part, the feeling of doing the right thing without needing to prove it. Now I understand. Some things can't be bought, can't be measured by career or reputation." He exhaled. "I came today to return a debt you never asked for. Back then, I gave you $20. Now," he met her eyes unwavering, "now I just want to give you my life, if you still have room for it." Emma froze. The rain broke into distinct beats, as if the world were holding its breath. 1 second. 2. Then she laughed through tears, eyes shimmering. "That's some heavy interest, Ethan." "I can add an appendix to the contract," he said, voice trembling with a laugh. "Clause 1, no regrets." Emma reached across the table, her hand finding his. The touch was light, simple, but deeper than any promise. "No contract needed," she whispered. "We both know some things exist without signatures." Outside, the rain softened, as if the sky, too, knew to stay quiet and let them listen to each other breathe. 1 year later. It was another afternoon just like that one, but the sky was blue and sunlight poured through the diner window. Ethan stood outside the same place where it had all begun, holding a small box. The diner was unchanged. Old wooden tables, the scent of apple pie, the familiar chime as the door opened. Emma walked in, laughing as soon as she saw him. "Don't tell me you brought another pie." "No," Ethan smiled. "Today I brought something smaller." He opened the box. Inside, a simple silver ring gleamed against a lining of blue velvet. "No flowers, no candles," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "Just this. I want to walk beside you, not to repay a debt, but to write the best part of our story together." Emma stood still, eyes bright with tears that sparkled like water. Then she laughed through them, voice trembling but clear. "You sure you're not afraid I'll grade you every day?" "I'm okay with a C average," he said, "as long as I get to stay in your class." She nodded, tears slipping down her smiling lips. No more words were needed. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand shaking, hers cold. But between their hands was a warmth that needed no name. 3 months later, the wedding took place in the small garden behind the school. Emma's students lined both sides of the aisle, each holding up a colorful book, forming a tunnel of pages and laughter. The diner owner came too, carrying a basket of pies. Emma walked slowly down the aisle, simple white dress, radiant beneath a thin veil. Ethan waited, wearing a light gray suit, his eyes soft as she approached. When the pastor asked for vows, Ethan squeezed her hand, his voice low but steady, every word etched into the air. If someday someone asks what changed me, I'll say, it was a girl I once forgot, but who never stopped believing in kindness. Tears slid down Emma's cheeks, but she smiled and answered, her voice shaking yet firm. And I'll say, some memories are meant to be forgotten, so we can finally see each other with new eyes. For a heartbeat, the garden was silent. Then it burst into applause and laughter. Two of Emma's youngest students shouted, "Ms. Emma, the pie's ready." Ethan leaned down and kissed her forehead, whispering, "Today I've got sugar." She laughed through her tears. This kind doesn't expire. Months later, in their small shared office, a wooden plaque hung on the wall. Kindness Project, the Kindness Fund. It was a foundation they built together for underprivileged students who needed school aid or legal help. No ads, no media, just a quiet website with a single message. No act of kindness is ever wasted. When one person truly sees another, the world is already better. Every week they met with students and listened to their stories. Some got help with birth certificates, others earned scholarships through carefully written applications. Ethan was still a lawyer, but no longer a hero, just a man helping others see that the law could smile too. One afternoon, while Emma was hanging new drawings sent by her students, Ethan came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Do you see it?" he whispered. "We started with $20 and now we've got a whole life." She turned to him, eyes glimmering in the soft light. "And you know," she said gently, "sometimes the real miracle isn't remembering, it's changing enough to deserve what we once forgot." They stood still, listening to the soft drizzle against the window. Just like that first rainy afternoon, he'd brought her pie. Ethan lowered his head and kissed her forehead, murmuring, "Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me." And Emma whispered back, "Thank you for learning to see yourself." Outside, the light rain brushed against the small plaque of the Kindness Project, reflecting a faint golden glow. Inside that little room were two people who had once been broken, once lost in pride, and now had found each other through the simplest things: kindness, forgiveness, and a love that needed no proof. Sometimes all it takes is one person pausing in the rain, reaching out and saying, "It's not charity, it's just one person looking out for another." Years later, that sentence was still their heartbeat, proof that no matter how wounded the world becomes, there will always be room for something beautiful to grow.